Okay, so we should be live here. Uh, Thank you all for joining us today for our first Saskatchewan info session, our first info session of the fall season here for Saskatchewan, and covering the details of our fall Saskatchewan summit, how the process works, a little bit about TNT as a whole, and getting into the details of what's going to be happening over the course of this fall season. So I'm going to jump right in to a presentation here, and we're going to get this show on the road. Okay. So, all right. Thank you all for being here. And just a real quick background on myself, for those that don't know. I grew up on a farm just outside of Saskatoon. That's it there. My father was a serial entrepreneur in addition to being a farmer. Built a couple of companies through the 80s and 90s. So I've always kind of been around entrepreneurship and really interested in venture and how to build a company. But it took me a little while to figure out my inspiration and actually, figure out what I wanted to do. As I mentioned, my dad built a couple companies. One of them was called Settler Computer Technologies, later known as Ag Expert with Farm Credit Canada. They acquired that in 2002, alongside another business, family business that was acquired that same year by a different party. But those two acquisitions kind of set the stage. Then combined with my interest in Dragon's Den and the entrepreneurial journey, I went to York University and tried to build some stuff out while I was out in Toronto, but was unsuccessful. Came home during COVID and got to conversations with my father about investing and getting involved with entrepreneurs. And through that, I found Startup TNT. Was started in Edmonton, actually, originally, for those that don't know. And I brought it here to Saskatchewan in 2021, and it's been operating here ever since. Well, the mission of the organization, it is a non-for-profit. So the mission is to build local communities to help invest in their startups by working with entrepreneurs, investors, government, sponsors, organizations like where I'm sitting right now, Collabs here in Saskatoon, working with all these groups to help collaborate and get investments driving into the top startups within those regions so that they can grow abroad while still being here at home, right? And so that was really important to me. I wanted, Saskatchewan to be a great place to live for the long term. I like technology companies. I like the startup atmosphere. I like working with entrepreneurs. So we brought it here, and it's been operating ever since. And people might ask though, when they think about Startup TNT and us being a not for profit, why do we need an organization to go out and activate investors, right? To get them, investing more into the companies here in the province and across Western Canada. Well, the big thing is, a lot of investors, while they're experts, in business or in a particular field, accounting, legal, right? The folks who have that income or wealth to potentially invest, they typically are experts in one area, but they're not really experts in how to do due diligence on a startup, right? They don't have the necessary skill set. They don't feel comfortable. There's a lot of paperwork to go over. There's a lot of structuring to be put in place, and it can be really overwhelming. And these are successful people. They haven't felt dumb or stupid amongst their peers for a while. They're seen as successful in the community, so they um they really do want to invest. They want to, but they don't really know how, and it kind of gets put into that too hard pile, right? Where with the consideration of the 25K checks, as founders watching this, you don't really want to take checks smaller than that because it's annoying to raise 250 $500,000 5K at a time. And in order for investors to get a return, they need to invest in 10 to 20 companies. And to do that, for most investors to invest 25, $50,000 into 10 to 20 companies, well, that's just, a totally out to lunch opportunity for them, right? They can't possibly allocate that much funds into this, right? So that a lot of high net worth individuals in communities like Saskatchewan are actually pretty rational for not investing in early stage startups, right? And so, but the problem is that we really do need angel investors in a community in order to really build a vibrant startup ecosystem, right? Angels, they have those industry connections. They're often from industry. They've built successful businesses. They have lots of potential connections for more funding, but also for customers, pilot projects, and the like. Right? They've got the opportunity also to validate some of those early pieces of traction that you might need for your company, right? Because they've worked in industry, they can leverage their own reputation in the ecosystem to help you maybe find people that can actually keep pulling this thing forward, like basically saying this is a legitimate technology and people should take it seriously. And you need that early on when you're building a startup. You really need, somebody to champion you in the community. And so we need more angels. And so TNT has developed a solution to the problem where our investors pre-commit capital. And I'll get to that in a minute on kind of how exactly that works. They work together collaboratively to do group due diligence over an 8-week period, so they can collaborate and kind of spreads the workload out so that different people with different expertise are able to focus on different areas. Accountants can focus on the accounting area, legal on legal, and so on and so forth. We work to sort of keep paperwork and the legal process pretty simple, where the investors, they just sign the paperwork and we help take care of, the safe or the agreements that we need to put in place with you as a founder. And by this, we're able to get a whole bunch of people in the community to come together and invest in local companies. Right. And so we've been doing this since 2020, sorry. Was our first investment in Edmonton. 2021 was our first investments here in Saskatchewan. Uh, the TNT in the name stands for Thursday Night Tradition. For those that don't know, we try to meet up regularly on Thursday nights. Kind of going through a bit of a rework right now in Saskatchewan, so stay tuned for our next event there. But we've invested in a large number of companies. Here are just a few of the logos of some of our winners from across Western Canada over the past couple of years here. Some really great companies. And one of the things I'll note here is broad range of different sectors, right? You've got companies from the ag space, you got companies legal, prop tech, IoT sensors, right? We got a mixture of hardware and software, about 40% hardware, 60% software overall in the TNT portfolio. We've also got a large number of female founded companies in the portfolio. About 40% of our overall portfolio is female founded, which is really great to see, and also quite a bit of diversity with BIPOC founders as well, right? So because we've got this diversity of investors on the other side of the table from the founders, we end up actually seeing a really great diversity in the final investments that our investors end up investing in. So that's one of the reasons why we do what we do, and our motto is have fun, make friends, build companies. So we do that every week. And just some quick updates on some of our stats. We've run a total of 11 summits that have taken place with Saskatchewan companies. 24 portfolio companies have come out of that. There's some interesting stats there. About 10% of first-time applicants get funding, but then it actually goes up to about 44% of two-time applicants. So a number of our companies have come through multiple times. In total, 185 investors from across Western Canada have invested in Saskatchewan companies. About half of that number is locally based, but there's a lot of investors that invest in Saskatchewan companies, and I'll explain how that all kind of works in a minute. But about $4.2 million has been raised from those 185 angel investors. So a lot of small checks coming together into those companies. These companies are growing. They're out there. They're doing well. Some have, unfortunately, kind of folded under. There's been a handful of those across the overall 120 portfolio across TNT. But we've also started to see some exits and some really positive signs of traction. You look at those funding numbers there, 10.5 million more raised and non-dilutive, 18.8 million in raised and dilutive. These companies are continuing to raise additional capital. I'm working on one right now, about $2 million going into one of our past summit winners here in Saskatchewan. Really excited to see these companies continue to see progress and that other investors outside the ecosystems are taking notice of the investments that we're making. Uh, wouldn't be possible without this generous support of all of our awesome partners and sponsors. So our core funding partner is Innovation Saskatchewan, Best Friends Forever, Chess Club, and Recurture. And we got all kinds of close friends and community supporters there: BDC, Osler, MNP, BDO, Creative Destruction Labs, RBCX, NSBA, Chamber, and EDR. Some really amazing groups across Saskatchewan and Western Canada that are all supporting startups. So if you're looking for some great vendors for different elements like marketing with Chess Club, legal, McCurcher, accounting, MNP, and BDO, these are the vendors that we recommend to you for that. Just some quick highlights of some folks. We've got myself as the TNT Community Development Lead. I'll be running the summit. I'm doing a lot of the work. You'll see a lot of the emails coming from me. We've also got Jonah, TNT Operations Lead. He's behind the scenes, but might be seeing some emails from him, especially if you end up getting investment from us, because he helps deal with all the paperwork and everything. Niles, you'll see him on there here on the call. You can give a quick wave. But yeah, he's our SK and agri-food operations lead, helping make sure the summit stays on track. Then, of course, you all know Zach and Tim, the co-founders and general partners for TNT's investments. They will be coordinating, especially near the end of the process, with you to close any deals that we make. And there might be a couple more names announced soon that could be jumping in and helping support the summit as well here in Saskatchewan. But you might be asking, okay, what is the summit all about? Why is it created? Well, as I mentioned before, it's all about gaining experience for the investors, but also for the founders, right? So, when founders are looking to raise capital, it's a bit of a game, right? There's a lot of lingo that you need to learn. There's some dynamics to the way that you approach the meetings, the way that you approach the conversations with investors that you need to learn, and you often need a little bit of a sandbox, right? So the same reason, professional athletes practice before they play in the championship, right? Before you go out and try to raise, hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital from larger investors, why not talk to some local people who know you or want to get to know you really well because they're from here, right? They care about Saskatchewan, they care about Saskatchewan founders, and they want to help you grow, right? And so you get an opportunity to really talk to them, to get some feedback at every stage of the process. There's an opportunity to get feedback. Just jumping ahead to number three there, from the investors. Both like they'll tell you directly in the meetings that you have with them. They'll give you some feedback there. But then at the very end, if you do get eliminated at any process or spot in the process, you will get high quality feedback on how you can improve for the future and ways that you can maybe approach investment elsewhere. Uh, Big piece of the process is learning how to build a data room and just overall manage due diligence, manage the story that you're telling, the narrative that is being communicated to investors. And finally, there, number four, increasing your visibility overall in the startup community is really important. Name of the game for customers, for more funding, for support from granting bodies, or just other potential partners that you could work with, different organizations, people working on the same problem, potential employees. All of that is just about getting more visibility out there. So we've got two great events where there's a lot of visibility happening, and I'll explain kind of more about all of this as I keep going through. But yeah, once again, just a quick reminder: if anyone's got any questions that are watching here live today, I know this recording is going to be up on YouTube as well. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to jump into the chat or raise your hand using the reaction function on Zoom here. So if your company a fit, so this all sounds great to you. You're like, man, I really want to get involved with this. Couple of things. You will be required to participate in about 6+ weeks of due diligence. Um, See a question there in the chat. I will get to that in just a second. But yeah, you will be required to participate in 6 weeks of due diligence. And we would like for you to join us in person at the TNT Pitch Night, October 9th. I already had a couple people reach out say that they might not be able to make that. We will accommodate if absolutely necessary. For example, at the summit finale a few years ago, we had someone who had COVID the day of the finale. We had them do it remotely. It happens. We do run all of our events with both an in-person and virtual component so that if there is any event that somebody um, for whatever reason is unable to be there in attendance, we can accommodate. But as much as possible, and the most benefits come from attending these events in person. So please mark those in your calendar if you're thinking of applying. And then of course, you need to be ready to like actually take in money at the end of the day. So the winning deal will raise $100,000 plus in total from the syndicate or the VC fund. The Just to get kind of the question that came in the chat was around valuation, agreeing valuation. Leading up to the finale, we do a deal terms negotiation. We obviously push for a certain number. You're going to want to push for maybe a higher number. At the end of the day, we basically end up at a point where you're saying, here's the deal that I'm presenting to the investors. They're going to vote yes or no if they decide they want to take that valuation. And sometimes it's no, and sometimes even in spite of some hard negotiation from our side, trying to get it to go lower, the investors still think that it's a good deal and invest anyway, right? So all of the valuation is as a conversation for that sort of top 10 to top 5 stage in particular. As we get closer to the end, we do actually have to set a valuation or a valuation cap on a safe or a convertible note by the finale night, because that is what we end up voting on. Is, where's our money going to go and on what terms. So those companies that we're looking at, speaking to the kind of terms, they're usually the pre-series A. I say sort of sub $20 million valuations, ideally, sub $10 million valuations. I've done some other presentations in the past. You can find them on our YouTube channel where you see kind of our valuations for winners usually lands around like that 6 to 8 million Canadian post money number. The companies that raise, though, they're pre and post revenue, right? So where you are in your journey growing your company, doesn't really matter if you've developed revenue. What we're really usually checking for is some semblance of traction, right? Is this a product? Is this, has the technology been developed? Has some IP been established? But we can get more into that later on. This is a Saskatchewan stream. There are other streams happening at the same time. There is a Alberta stream and an agri-food stream that is national, but that's very specific, hyper specific on that sector. So if you are an agri-food, you will be kind of recommended to be pushed over to that stream. But otherwise, any sector, any hardware, software, you could be more of a mom and pop type business. Just bear in mind, those investors here with TNT are generally looking for companies that are looking to really scale globally with a technology component, hardware, software, whatever it is. But it generally has to have those. All right. Keep rolling through. When are these things happening? How's it going? Well, we're here near or 2 weeks away from September 17th with the applications to close then. If you do absolutely need an extension, please reach out to let me know ahead of time, because we will be jumping straight into the summit. Actually, we forgot to put it on here. We have September 23rd and 24th is our kickoffs for the summit. So the investors kick off as well as the companies, and then we pretty much right away we cut them down to 20, or sometimes it's a little bit less, but usually around 20 companies that we choose to head into light due diligence with. So each of those 20 companies gets a 30-minute meeting with investors where they'll be bombarded with questions. We actually provide you with a template that has all the questions in it ahead of time so you can prepare. And that same template is provided to the investors in terms of the types of questions. It might not be verbatim exactly, but there are different areas, from market traction to intellectual property to product roadmap to the financials and exit strategy. All of that is in that first light due diligence. We get through a lot in 30 minutes. Then we get a chance to see you pitch at the top 20 pitch night. Using that information, plus the investors are meeting regularly behind the scenes to talk about it. They're in Slack. They're talking about your companies. And at the end of that period there in the top 20, we pick 10 companies that we feel are worth really diving into and getting into the deeper due diligence, because that's when we get in the data rooms. I'll explain that in a minute, what that means. But we get into your data rooms. We dig in deeper. We start asking more questions about the deal terms and the valuations and all of that. And then eventually we come up with a top five. I'll also explain how the voting system works in a minute. But then we cut it down to our five that will pitch at the finale night on November 13th here in Saskatoon at Vendasta. Really exciting night because live on stage we announce a winner that gets the 100K plus prize, and then it takes us probably 4 to 6 weeks to just confirm exactly how much investment is going to be coming in and collect all the funds and get it transferred over to you. Behind the scenes as well, there's some entrepreneur education happening. And again, I'll explain how all that works in a minute. But generally, during due diligence, you can kind of expect to follow along here through these steps, as I mentioned, starting with those coffee meetings. That's just 30-minute meetings with the investors. And then potentially there's some ongoing meetings with investors, especially at that next stage when we get into the data rooms. We will do reference checks as well, especially as we get down to the later stages. We'll want to talk to some of your customers or potential customers, depending on your comfortability there. Again, conversation. We want to work with you. We don't want to hurt you. And we'll want to talk if you have other investors. We'll want to talk to those other investors. If you've got some mentors and advisors, we want to talk to them. We want to see how you work with mentors and advisors because that's partially why we're investing. Some of the investors want to help mentor and advise and help grow your company. The data room again, that's got all your legal, your accounting, all your financials, your product roadmap, your IP, everything is in there. I will note here this time that T&T generally does not sign NDAs of any kind when reviewing data rooms, unless absolutely necessary for some key scientific material, especially around like say life sciences type companies, where there is more substantive IP. Otherwise, all of our investors are under a confidentiality agreement. I will mention that, so just keep that in mind. Does the company have to be registered in Saskatchewan? No, it does not. Our rule around being SK is mind and management, whereas the majority of the people who are in charge of this company located, the majority of the team located. We, for example, had a Saskatchewan company that was technically a Delaware C Corp that we invested in. So it's doesn't necessarily have to be like legally headquartered in Saskatchewan. We care more about is like when you think about the feel of this company, is it a Saskatchewan company? And then yeah, we get into deal structure negotiations near the end of the process. Um, yeah, oh yeah, Karen just asked about SDSI registration. Yeah, we'd love for SDSI registration if you have it. But that's not a make or break either. We've had companies that didn't have SDSI that still got investment in these Saskatchewan. Um, and the SDSI, just for those that don't know, is a tax credit that the Saskatchewan government provides to technology companies for investors in those companies. You get 45% of your investment back as a non-refundable tax credit, so it goes against your tax liability. Pretty awesome for local investors. We definitely take advantage of that, and certainly a factor in the size of the check that the investors will put in. The larger, or sorry, the more tax credit you've got, then the more advantage that the investors can have by putting in more money. They can get more tax credit back. For some of these investors, that's pretty significant. So yeah, as I mentioned, we get into deal structure negotiations. We set that up with you at the end of the process, and often, especially near the end, we really want to see demonstrations of the technology. For example, there was a company here that flips the top of train cars open, right? And so we went to the facility and we watched the AI use a robot to open up the train cars to see the end of to see that process happen before we made our final decision. So all of that happens over the course of about 6 to 8 weeks, and yeah, it's pretty exciting. And then behind the scenes, how are these companies being chosen? Well, as we dig through the process, the first step is the investors do a quick vote of about 10, at least 10 of the applicants that applied. So you're going to apply with some answers to some simple questions, plus a pitch deck, maybe even a pitch video. Keep in mind, like the investors are moving very quickly, so typically they're just looking at the deck as well as the answers to the questions. They're going to spend about 5 minutes on each company, so it's very quick. But this is a simulation of the reality of getting investors in the real world, right? As you know, you send an email to an investor with a pitch deck, they're going to review it quick and kind of decide yes or no if they want to move on and have a meeting with you. And so that's how that first process works. They're going to rank them on a score of 4 to 1. So 4 is a hard yes, I would love to meet with this company to learn more. 1 is a hard no, I would not want to meet with this company. Based on that, maybe some other comments in Slack, we come up with this top 20, and then we could take those 20 companies, as I mentioned, and we see them for the first time, and the pitch. And then there's a ranked ballot voting system from there on. So the investors will rank their top 10 companies or top 5 companies. 10 gets 10 points, 1 gets 10 points, 2 gets 9 points, 3 gets 8 points, so on and so forth. The ones with the most points at each ranked ballot vote move on to the next stage. Then when we get to the top 5, again, 1 gets 5 points, 2 gets 4 points. The final company with the most points wins. In the event that there is a tie, which has happened a couple of times, the company with the most first place votes takes the win. And it's a winner take all when it comes to the initial pre-committed pot. But most summits have more than one funded deal. And that's really exciting. Um, and I'll explain how that works in a minute, but just going to check here in the chat. We got some more questions. Is Federator head office and does that qualify? No, that wouldn't qualify for SDSI. They need to know where the headquarters is. But again, SDSI is not a deal breaker for investment from us. Okay, yeah, so we have as I mentioned, 2 pitch nights in during the summit process. One in Regina, one in Saskatoon to kind of spread it out a little bit. So the one in Regina will be at the Science Center on October 9th. Doors open always at 5 p.m. local. Pitches start at 6. It's a public pitch event, so people will be encouraged to come out and support. Obviously want you to encourage your friends to come and support your friends and family, and any potential investors to come see you pitch on stage. And then we have an after party there in Regina, and also those watching online that are in Saskatoon will be able to go out and meet folks here in Saskatoon to talk about what they saw on TV. Uh, and then kind of in the reverse for the finale night at Vendasta, as I mentioned, in Saskatoon on the 13th of November. Big pitch night there on the top floor, followed by an after party. We usually go to a bar nearby. And if you happen to be in Regina that night, again, you can watch it online, and there'll be locals in Regina that you can meet up with afterwards to toast the winner. The summit program itself, people kind of like, what is the entrepreneur education? What are we kind of doing behind the scenes? Well, of course, the process itself, the meetings you're going to have with the investors, that's a great education opportunity for you. These are successful business people. Yes, they're doing due diligence in your company. Yes, they're going to be a little dragon's denny and asking you a lot of questions about your numbers and what you're looking to do with your business. But also don't, feel afraid to say, hey, what do you think about that? Right. Here's where we're thinking we're going to go with the company. Yes, we want you to have strong conviction, but we also want to see that you're willing to work and learn and adapt and pivot. And so those meetings are really great for that. They're going to evolve over the course of the summit period. They become more sort of coaching and mentoring as you get closer to the end of the process, as those investors become your advocates inside the wider TNT investor pool and are helping coach you on the best way to make sure that the other investors get excited about your deal and end up investing in your company. There are then 3 sessions during the summit process, one sort of at each stage: top 20, top 10, top 5. At the top 20 stage, we do a peer-to-peer pitch practice for the pitch night. Say that 3 times fast. Well, on October 2nd, these are always at like 10 a.m. Mountain Time, on the Thursday morning. So you'll get to, as it says, pitch to your peers. So we'll have rooms set up with a coach. Some of our partners and sponsors get involved. They get an opportunity to kind of lead a peer-to-peer feedback session where you're going to get a chance to pitch and get about 10 minutes of feedback from your peers on how to improve your pitch for the actual pitch night the following week. This is a great opportunity to get prepared. It's one of our favorite sessions amongst those that participate in the summit. On the next, uh, we've got deal term office hours. So a lot of people asking questions about how to set up their deal, best way to make a deal. We've got a lot of recordings on this that we will be sharing. I also mentioned that when we get to our resources that are available to you. Um, so you've got that. We'll share that with you. But then during those office hours, we bring in some of our legal counsel friends to help navigate tricky situations, ask questions, and really help you better understand, the best way to structure a deal in your company, and also think about how the next round following this round may affect the way that you structure the deal today. So that's on October 23rd. And then VC office hours. Big thing for us as we get down to the end of the process is ensuring that you're not only able to raise capital from us, but able to raise the overall capital that you need to grow your company. So maybe you're looking for 500,000. Our typical winner check size ends up actually around 200,000. So we need more money to get in there in order to raise the rest of that. We're not going to be the only check that goes in. Well, we have a bunch of venture capital friends that love looking at the deals with us, and we set up a speed dating time where you get a chance to meet some of these folks, and then hopefully they will take some interest in your company and potentially invest. And we've had some pretty great leads come out of that session as well. One of our favorite sessions, and a kind of special reward for making it to that top 5 stage that you get to kind of go out and meet some of the other investors in our network. As I mentioned, there are a lot of resources for those that really want pitching practice. Check out our YouTube channel. There's a great pitch boot camp on there with David Yiptong and John Lipoth. When they were both actually in different jobs that they're in now, but they're great experts on the topic. And of course, due diligence and data rooms, preparing for that. There's a whole series on how to build a data room. You can find our checklist as well online, and we can share those links with you later on as well. Uh, Right, data room. Yes. So there is a preferred structure on that question. Someone is asking, is there a preferred structure on the data rooms? Yes, there is. The due diligence checklist that you'll find on the resources page of our website, as well, will be shared during the summit. That's how we kind of like to have it lined out. Yes, it needs to be ready for the top 10 stage. If you have it ready before then, it kind of just makes you look prepared and ready to go. If you're, feeling proactive. One thing I will mention here, maybe this is a little tip or trick for those watching this company info session. Being proactive during the summit is never a bad thing, right? Yes, we have a very structured process that we follow, but if you're like, hey, we just had this meeting where we talked about, your product roadmap, sending the product roadmap document that you've already prepared to the investors after that meeting, being like, I realized you guys were talking a lot about, this as a topic, then is going to make you look really prepared, right? And investors are going to like that. So having your data room ready ahead of time going into the summit. Obviously, it's one thing is going to make sure that you're not as stressed once the summit hits and you start diving in. But will also, make you look more prepared, and investors want to invest in prepared founders. So keep that in mind. And of course, check out our website. There is a playlist on our YouTube channel as well called Resource Database, like Entrepreneur Resource Database. So take a look for that. There's all kinds of great sessions in there on a variety of different topics, from IP to financial modeling to finding debt vehicles to all kinds of different things in there. So tons of resources available for you. Also really quick, a lot of people have questions about this, so I'll just go through it quickly here. The investment structure, how does this actually work? So our investors, as I mentioned, they each pre-commit $5,000. They pay us a small fee, $500 to participate as well. That covers our legal and accounting costs. We syndicate that all into a limited partnership. Additionally, we have a VC fund, the Vintage Fund 2025, which is co-investing $40,000 automatically into the winner of the process. So there's, say, a pool of 20 to 30 investors, and then you got the 40K investment. So we combine that all together. We say like a minimum of sort of 100K investment is made by the LP, but typically, as I mentioned, it goes up to much closer to like 200K. It ends up being one line item on your cap table that comes through the investment at the end of the day. So you end up with like 30, 40, 50, maybe even more investors behind the scenes. We have a system by which you are able to communicate with all of them, but you don't have to manage all of them, right? We only have to manage, getting in touch with the one or two TNT staff members that you're going to be working with, kind of post investment. But if the investors choose to get more involved, that's up to you and up to them. We've had investors that have chosen to join in on companies as employees. We've even had one take over as the CEO of the company. We've had investors join boards. We don't typically take board seats, just as an FYI. That's not a part of our investment strategy because it's hard for us to manage that as part of like a larger syndicate. But if an individual investor that's a part of the group is like reaches out, makes a really great connection with the founder, and it's like, I don't want to join the board, then that happens. Okay, I'm going back to question. Who pays the fees, including legal fees, to complete the investment? Depends on the situation. So typically we're doing investments on a safe, which usually mean no real legal costs because we're using a template. If you then choose to go back and forth with a legal counsel on your end to like red line the safe and like change it based off of our template, then you're going to have to pay for the legal fees to do that. If we do, for whatever reason, need to like fully structure the deal and all of that, again, that's a conversation that we'll have on kind of how that works. Typically, in that case, though, there'll be a lead investor, and that lead investor will have set terms on the legal fees to complete the investment. And often that is done through them getting you to pay via kind of the investment they made into you. There's a great article, and maybe that's what you're referring to, Matt, by Chris Newman the other day about legal fees and kind of how that all works. So, highly recommend you all check out Chris Newman's vlog. He's a awesome investor out of Vancouver. And then I noted a few times before that TNT does more than just one deal in a summit. Well, that's because we have what we call side deals. And so our investors can invest more into the winner of their stream or into any of the deals around the table across all the streams. So as I mentioned, we have Saskatchewan, Agri-Food, and Alberta happening this fall. All three streams kind of complete around the same time. The investors in any one of those streams have an opportunity to cross invest. So the investors in Alberta can invest in the winner in Saskatchewan. The winner in investors in Saskatchewan can invest in the winner in Agri-Food, yada, yada, yada. And they can invest in the side deal and the companies that didn't win. And often companies that didn't win, they got a side deal, will come back again, a year or two in the future and win. One of my favorite companies, Omni, here in Saskatoon, that's exactly what happened with them. They got a side deal in the fall of 21 and then ended up winning the summit in the spring of 23. So yeah, that's how that works. And again, it's all syndicated through a limited partnership, so it's still one line item on the cap table. With I just will mention though with the side deals that the VC fund is not necessarily involved, but has the opportunity actually to participate in our new model of the VC fund. We actually had them participate in 3 of the side deals in our spring cohort. So a couple quick notes on sort of just, what we expect of you and how you approach this whole situation, best way to to participate. As I mentioned earlier, be receptive to feedback, right? We want you to have a strong opinion, but hold it loosely. You have opportunities to learn, to grow, to change what you're working on. Maybe somebody has a better idea, maybe they don't, and maybe you need to defend why. They don't have the better idea than you do. But yeah, just be prepared to receive feedback if you get really competitive with investors. They're not going to want to give you their money. That's probably the best way to put it. And so that brings me to my second point is you want to make friends with these local investors, right? We will be planning a series of happy hours. We have those pitch night events and the finale, those opportunities to come out to meet these investors in person, spend some time with them, get to know them. Our motto, have fun, make friends, build companies. We want you to come out to these events on a regular basis, get to know who these people are and they get to know who you are, right? And they're more and more likely. One of my favorite examples, we had a quiet happy hour during a summit. One of the founders of Off Street happened to be up here in Saskatoon, came up to the happy hour. Just so happened, one of our new investors was there at the table. They spent 2 hours together after I even left, happened to leave the happy hour. And the next day, the investor went online onto the Slack with all of our local investors, said, "Hey, I was not sold on this business before, but I spent 2 hours with the founder last night, really got to know him. This is awesome. This is my favorite now." And Off Street ended up winning that summit, not necessarily just because of that one vote, but because of how they approached the whole summit, right? They took every opportunity to meet those investors, to really build those connections, and that really showed at the end of the day in the final tally on the vote. And of course, this is a competition. You are kind of competing against each other, but we also want to build community amongst the entrepreneurs, right? You're all on this journey together. Some of you at different points, but we want you to learn, to grow, to encourage each other, cheer each other on at the pitch nights, and really make sure that this whole community here in Saskatchewan is being successful at the end of the day. Um, Staying in touch. We got the weekly email updates. If you want our newsletter as well, check out our website, bottom of the page. Sign up for that. We do regular happy hours, as I mentioned. Waiting on the schedule. Stay tuned for that. It should come next week on the schedule for the happy hours this fall. And we've got that entrepreneur resource base on both the website and on our YouTube channel on how to keep up with everything. I mentioned the happy hours. Please join us for those when you can and when we announce more dates. And if you'd like to get in touch, feel free to reach out to me. I will open the floor for any additional questions or things that I didn't cover, because that's the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? All right, chat. Okay. Is there a TNT tonight? Unfortunately, there is not tonight. Sorry. But if you are going to be in Regina next week, highly recommend you check out the Cultivator Founder Summit with the SK Startup Summit. They're doing founders only during the day. And then in the evening, there's going to be a mixer, and I will be down there in Regina for the mixer next week. Yes, Regina TNT is still operating and happening regularly. They did one, the last happy hour they did was on the 28th, but we haven't had one since then.
So Jesse, question for you.
Yes, please.
Great presentation. Thank you. And wow, what a extensive structure that you set up. So congrats on the success.
Thank you.
Question. So if we're looking to raise more than the amount that's typically distributed through, can we be doing some some raise activities in parallel to it?
Absolutely. And actually, I would highly encourage you run them in parallel. The companies that do the best are the ones that are running their own sort of, like, TNT is one component of their overall process, I should say.
Okay. All right.
For example, as I mentioned, like Off Street was a prime example. They actually had concerns. They're like, well, is this a different process or is it the same process? Once they got into it, they realized, okay, this is just one piece of our process. And by the end of the summit, we were able to put together a whole round because they had gone out and found a lead investor, and our investors came in alongside, and then there were other existing investors that came in, and so like 1 million plus came together at the end of the day, right? And so that's how we would like to see. If you need us to set terms to get other investors to jump in, that's certainly the conversation we can start to have at that top 10 to top 5 stage. And then we, as we get down to the top 5 stage, that's actually where we'll jump in and say, okay, who are these other folks that maybe are interested? Maybe we jump on a call. We really love your company. We want to invest in Ethnomet. Who else might be interested? Let's see if we can get more people interested, because it's in our own best interest to make sure that any company that we're going to invest in ends up raising the rest of the money, right? So we'll try to collaborate and work with you to get the rest of the funds pulled in.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no problem. Any other questions? I really appreciate the questions from everybody. All right. Well, if there's no other question, oh, what is the full amount? Isn't raised like for the whole round. Um, well, that leaves us in a bit of a spot. So typically, I mean, where we're investing on safer notes. So we're putting it in, kind of on some good faith that you'll go out and raise it. And sometimes they don't end up raising the rest of the money, and then it sits there for a while. And then, maybe they come back again for a future round. And we have some questions about, whether or not we invest more. So it's, not necessarily the end of the world, but ideally, we help you actually pull the rest of the amount together. But it's, this isn't an exact science, a little bit more of an art. These are great questions, by the way, Matt. Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm gonna stop share and leave it there. I'm gonna stop the recording.